start doing things the same way, pretty soon your own troops are not adapting anymore. They start to get fixed mindsets. They get, like the fighter pilot called it, tunnel vision. Even if the situation's the same, do it differently. Because otherwise, you're going to become victims. Now, typically, we tend to show it like this, which is, that's nice for a map and all. That's not really what is happening. Multiples sweeping one way or the other. Okay, so if you look at the creation of Blitzkrieg, here's the kind of things that end in the envelopment, Lucas canine, double single envelopment, flying column, tank attack, infiltration, pull it all together, you have Blitzkrieg all of Heinz Canary. Multiple narrow thrusts. I have a narrow thrust button. Armored reckoning, commanders forward. Commanders forward. In other words, so they understand what's going on in the battle, understand what's going on in the operation, so they give the right kind of orders, and they can adjust the circumstances. And then extensive communication net. Not extensive communication net with only what you have to say. And guess what they said, the Panzer men? Verbal orders only, not just written orders, verbal orders only. We asked Balkan and the German commanders, they were all the same reason. One, by giving a verbal order, what are you doing? If you only give a written order, you're really only communicating on one channel. When you give a verbal order, by your own personality, you're communicating on many channels. You really knows what you mean. So you have a richer communication. That's one reason. Another reason why is if you give a written order, the guy might actually suppress his initiative. Because he recognizes if he sort of gets outside that order, he can be court-martialed or something like that. So you have a verbal order that doesn't suppress initiative. More bold action. And then you write the orders up afterward. They may not read too honestly, but that's the point. And that's one of the reasons we like verbal orders, so you don't suppress initiative. Because one guy said, well, we fucked up the last time, I put more and more constraints in. If that guy goes outside, I'm going to have him by the ball. Because I got a written order. But once a guy knows that, oh, I'm not taking this. You see the subtlety there? So the verbal orders, it's lucid, but you have to understand what's going to be done. You also have to understand you have that common out. Note the word verbal orders only. One guy said, well, hell, we saw the written orders. He said, that's right. After the fact. We're going to have a big story about that. He's not only that, they read a lot better that way. After the fact. They look more perfect. You know, it's like a Monday morning quarter. Air you move or with artillery. Okay? Now, here we're getting down to a natural question. Why do we employ multiple thrusters? Bundles of thrust, bundles of thrust inside thrust. Now, some people say, well, for flank protection. You're really not getting at it. That's true, you get flank protection by doing that. Here's the reason why. Because when you have all that stuff thundering through there, you're presenting many simultaneous and sequential happenings to generate confusion. In other words, the other guy really doesn't understand what's going on, so you stretch out his time to respond, to react to it. He didn't know what to do. You're stretching out his time. You're stretching out his OODA. Therefore, you're also multiplying your opportunities to create and penetrate gaps. Remember, you got multiple thrusts through there. You only got one, and you have to hit a strength, it's over. You're done. If you have multiples going here, some are going to get hung up, some leak through, and at that point, you start shifting or emphasizing the shear pump where they're going to go, and the other guys just keep the other guy's attention, hold them by the nose, kick them in the ass. Well, except you got multiple holds them by the nose and kicks them in the ass. Not just one, you got multiples. Hold them by the noses and kick them in the many asses. You want to use a package expression. That's what you're doing. So by doing that, what's happening? You're creating multiple opportunities to split organs and develop disconnected remnants. In other words, you're generating what? Many non-cooperative centers of gravity. Multiple non-cooperative centers of gravity, so they can't function as an organic whole. And that's the power. That is the power. Go back and read World War I, where Foch tried those massive offenses. Everybody grouped together and they went nowhere. Go ahead.
One question. The maneuver warfare we've been studying all year is part of it is to enable us to react and to fight a force that is going to be numerically superior than we are going to be. Now, what this is telling me, and I could be wrong in my perception or how I'm reading this, is that number one, to have all these splinter groups and splinter thrusts you're talking about, we're going to have the forces to do that. In other words, we're going to have a large force. What if, in fact, you don't have the large force?
You still have multiple thrusts. You're just going to have it projected against only a part of them rather than against a huge part of them. That's all. A good example what Paul did. I'll give you a good example. When he's in Hungary in 1944 or 45, I can't remember the year.
45.
I think it was either 40. I think it was 45. But anyways, it's when they were being pushed back by the Russians. So you can look at the dates. And so that was pointed out for him. They said, Christ, one time he had 11 divisions that he was going against Russians. He only had 3 divisions. And they said, well, Christ, how did you defend? He says, there's no way you can defend, Paul said. He said, well, how did you defend? He said, I didn't defend, I attacked. And he rolled up the whole Russian front. He'd come in, multiple thrust, and roll them up from left to right or right to left. I don't know. And he was outnumbered, better than 3 to 1, and he made the attack. Well, that's, that Clausewitzian bullshit that the defense is a stronger form, that's horseshit. And not only that is it's, not only, I don't know if you read Clausewitz, not only that, he even contradicts himself, because later on, when he talks about the mountains, remember he says, first of all, defense is a stronger form. Then he gets in the mountains, which is rough terrain, and he says the offense is a stronger form. Well, he's already got a contradiction. Then he gets in the forest, and he's a little bit more clever. I read it very carefully. He's sort of saying the offense is a stronger form, but he couldn't say it. Well, what he's really saying then, the offense or defense, whether one's stronger than the other, dependent upon the situation, whether it be terrain or people in that. So therefore, if it depends upon the situation, then you say, why are you saying it's a stronger form? The stronger form depends upon whether it's a situation. So whether you're going to use the offensive or defense depends upon the situation. But he didn't say it that way. He says, because he had that absolute notion. It's horseshit. Even in his own book, you read it carefully, he's got it wrong. And then he says, act with the utmost concentration. There is no higher principle. And then you go back in Book 8, Chapter 9, he gives 4 exceptions. The reason why is because speed. You want to be fast. And there's no exceptions to speed. Well, if that's the case, then speed is a higher principle than concentration. Once again, another contradiction. If you don't believe me, get the guy, you see it right here. But see what he does, he's got a very goddamn heavy logic. And when you go through it, and you try to go through his logic, in his sense, pretty soon you get sucked into it, you can't think anymore. So I found myself doing it. I said, okay, now I got to think of the outside. And I said, hey, this is horseshit. Contradictions. Now, it doesn't mean he didn't have some good ideas, but I'm saying you can't take that whole thing. This crazy notion that defense is a stronger form. If it is, then how come he says that the offense is stronger in the mountains? And he sort of alludes it's stronger in the forest. And then he makes some other comments in there. Well, if you got more morale or something, you guys got less. Also, maybe offense may be stronger. Then you say, well, since the defense isn't a stronger form, then the offense is. You can't say that either. Which one you're going to use is going to be dependent upon the situation. And in both cases, there's no way I can defend with 3 divisions. I'm going to get clean. So he got a surprise attack, cleaned up the attack. I mean, later on, he rebriefed the forces, pushed them back, but he stopped that whole operation they were setting up against him. So in that case, his defense wasn't a stronger form. His attack or offensive was a stronger form. So don't believe that baloney. Read it carefully. That's what's wrong with Harry Summers. He read that goddamn Clausewitz. Pretty soon he's got this goddamn prism. He can only look through a Clausewitzian prism. He doesn't understand what's going on in the world. We won all the battles in Vietnam. He says, we won every battle. That's bullshit. We lost the battle on the home front. Wasn't that a battle? He said, yeah, that was the most important battle. We had to come home. So if you're going to use battle as a measure of merit, be sure you don't just narrowly truncate. It's only if we're out in the field. There's no other battles. You're going to use a measure of merit, you've got to be sure that it encompasses all the moral, the mental, and the physical phenomena. Otherwise, it's a horseshit maneuver. A horseshit measure. So don't let people dazzle with that crap. And so you can see what's happening. You're generating as many non-quantum centers of gravity, so you pull them apart. Okay, and then which lead to this. This is sort of I'm trying to compress it sort of one chart. The essence of Blitzkrieg. Here's the kind of thing you do. And ambiguity, deception, mobility, and you focus at violence, you quickly realize these kinds of things. And we said the other night, they always talk about those people who weren't here last night. They're always talking about deception playing. But what about ambiguity?
Hey, we ought to go back to what you were saying. You were talking about Bach in Hungary and the extreme case there. I'm still thinking of your question. I'm sure Bach was outnumbered, and I'm familiar with that quote too. He said, "I was so outnumbered, I had to attack." That's right. The way he put it. But now let's think about the attack, the invasion of France. The Germans again were outnumbered. I mean, there was no preponderance of forces when they used the same technique, or the same thing, the invasion of Russia, or Genghis Khan. As Colonel Boyd pointed out, Genghis Khan was always outnumbered. So
he had multiple threats. He was only outnumbered. Genghis Khan was only outnumbered. He had multiple threats, and they were spread over areas you can't believe.
So it's not, it's an illusion. In fact, it's exactly. Well, think of Ray Smith on Grenada. His Marines were the smallest force there, yet the same Marines were being counted again and again. And I think that's something about multiple thrusts that they do indeed give the illusion of numbers, of more numbers than there are, because you're counting the same.
You seem to be everywhere, but nowhere. Seem in one sense you're nowhere, but you're everywhere. Back and forth. The guys are all confusing. Okay, so the essence of Blitzkrieg, you see how it's going. You create many opportunities to penetrate those weaknesses again and again, exploit those opportunities, and the intent's very simple, and the implication. The idea, I don't care what you want to use it, infiltrate, penetrate, or get inside a system. Generate as many moral, mental, physical, non-cooperative centers of gravity. And then, if you can do that, then you can seize those things that he depends upon. Those things he depends upon? What is that? We've been saying it yesterday and tonight. What is that? Those are the vulnerabilities. Critical vulnerabilities. Those things he depends upon. That's vulnerability. But you've got to be able to pull them down and expose those vulnerabilities before you can get to them. Otherwise, if he knows their vulnerabilities, he's going to defend against them, and if you don't go through those weaknesses to expose them, you're going to have a tough time. Okay? And so here we got what I call a key to success. I'm just sort of wrapping a lot of things up with keys to success, maybe it's a better way to call it. So here's some examples then of successful Poland. When I'm talking about advance through France, I'm talking about Patton. Manchuria, the Russians against the Japanese Quantico army. Middle East, the Israelis. Czechoslovakia, the Russians. Middle East, again, the Israelis. After they got their act together, they had a little bit of problem at the beginning. And then Russia, unsuccessful winter campaign, fall, winter, North Africa, summer, etc. Let me talk to you. Fall, winter campaign, 1942-43. What was beginning to happen here? In the initial campaign, why were they unsuccessful in a lot of cases? In fact, I'll go down to the Ardennes. As time went on, Hitler began to put himself more and more into the operational aspect of the war. In other words, he conceived himself interfering in operations. And so the command structure became more and more rigid. And less flexible. And so by the time he got down to the Ardennes here, boy, he was determined how the operation was going to be conducted. Not the commanders. And every German officer I talked to, I said, why did he do that? And he said, very simple reason. He did not trust his commander. He mistrusted his commander. Did not trust his commander. So that's an essential truth. What I'm saying, all centralized command and control systems are based upon mistrust, not trust. Otherwise, why do you need it? Based upon mistrust, not trust. Now, I didn't say you shouldn't have it. Can you think of circumstances where even in spite of that, you definitely want a centralized command and control, and that's when you're dealing with strategic nuclear warfare. Because you don't want some guy flinging off a goddamn weapon. So that is based upon mistrust, and it should be. That's one reason. And talking to Balkan, and particularly Balkan made it out true, he said there's some other reasons why you want to do that. You might want to have very close guidance. He's, remember, let's pretend you're division commanders. Let's just imagine you're division commander. He's, you don't get the pick of the litter. You're going to get some choice of people you want. You're also going to have to take some choices you don't want. And the reason why you're going to take them is other people don't want them either. So you're going to have to be a little bit more careful. So the point is, what you want to do is have one kind of orders for one guy, different kind of orders for the other guy. In other words, you give some people a long leash, more detailed orders for somebody else. So instead of having one command and control system, in a sense, you have multiple command and control systems so you can maintain that organic wholeness. Now, with a modern electronic communication, how in the hell can you do that? You depend upon just electronics. You can't. And that's why they had verbal orders only, don't you understand? Because you can do it that way. But if you send out a message, then it has to be the same kind of message for everybody. But now, when you do it verbal orders only, you can be sure that you're going to tailor your order to the kind of guy you're dealing with. In other words, it's personality related. You're communicating on multiple channels. And what does that demand? You're not even going to be able to do that unless you know your own people. So if you're sitting back in a chateau somewhere and don't know your own people, you don't know what different orders you can give to different people to realize their tasks. Some guys you're going to put in a long leash. In fact, he talked about a couple of cases. One guy, Christ, he only talked to maybe once a week. He knew what had to be done. If you have some trouble, call me back once in a while and we'll go over it again. These other guys, he watched every goddamn day. But remember, the only way you can do that is if you know your people. If you don't know them, you can't play that game. Very important. Okay? With that in mind, let's get into the Guerrilla stuff now. This is my longest chart. I'll let you read that in more comment. Insurgency, Guerrilla, etc. Any more water around here? Oh, there it is. Note what I said, capitalize on disconnect, mistrust. You got to get those so-called crises in order to leverage the situation. Get you his own debt trap. Reason for being. You're a guerrilla. Damn insidious game, you can see. Been a very successful game, didn't it? You got the right conditions for it. So what do you observe here? Now you're observing what? Many non-cooperative moral, mental, and physical centers of gravity here. If you're imposed upon a government, so the government can't function, the regime can't function for organic whole. So you want to boil that down. here's the essence of the whole thing. Here's the intent behind it, the implication associated with it. See, in order to counter that, you got to set up sort of a counter game, and that's what the cap teams were trying to do in Vietnam. And of course, that's not fighting the war the way that, you're not allowed to do search and destroy operations there. So we got out of it. So, hell, we got to do that search and destroy stuff. How many people here saw the movie Platoon? By any chance? Interesting movie. What was the central message that came out of it? There is a central message. What was the big event? Remember, it was the attack upon the building. Remember that? And a lot of Marines and other people get mad. They say, "Well, you shouldn't be showing American people that. That stuff happened. You can't call these guys murderers." That's true, but it happened. They're not calling them murderers. But what's the whole point of it? I'm trying to tell you something. We shouldn't be attacking those goddamn villages. We should have been in the villages and try to get the other guy attack it, then he's the enemy. And that's what the cap teams tried to do. We worked the problem the wrong way. Exactly the wrong way. And the initial cap teams were sent over there, and the initial special forces were trying to do that. Hell, it takes too long. See, they understood you're still doing without any fighting. Make the other guy do it, then he's the enemy, and then you got to leverage on your side. And Mike can tell you about that. The guys are over there. Tell them about the situation at one time when you were there, what happened, Mike, when they pulled you off that.
Yeah,
it's a very important point right
in
now.
'65, and
it's a real important point.
We were working on the people and getting a good number of defectors to come in, and then using the defectors to go out and get other defectors. And as time went on, we put a message out to the people that, and this came from division headquarters. We had authority to tell people that the Marines were going to stay. Because there's a big question in the people's mind. They used to ask me a lot of times, and I'd operate in the villages. I was just a first lieutenant. But are the Marines going to stay here or not? Or are y'all going to leave? And I went into the chief of staff and tried to get into the general to get an answer to it. Finally, I mean, I was very naive. I was first lieutenant. I kind of capped, we're going to stay. We're going to stay here. So we put that out in leaflets and by word of mouth. Everybody, the Marines are here to stay. Then we took off and left. And went out into the hills on a.
You were ordered to. You didn't want to. You had no choice.
That's right. No choice at all. Well, and then came back again. The families of the people that had been working with me had been assassinated. And we never got any more defectors again. We got zero cooperation.
Now you have to attack the village.
And my colonel, when I went back to the colonel and told him what happened, he said, "Lieutenant, you killed him. You weren't. You were the murderer." So, I went back and sorted that out for a few years. But that's in a nutshell a very, very true story. We didn't understand the whole war.
See, Sun Tzu says he'll do enemy without any fighting. You don't want to go out and lead out there. You want to hold all the people. Next thing, the other guy has no resource to work for.
In order to do that, you're going to have to be willing to enter into protracted warfare, not only the military men, but also the civilian population. So you have to
That's right. You have to be willing to play the game so you can leverage the game. That's right. Well, Meg Say understood it.
Do we understand?
Do we? I don't think so to this day. I'd like to say yes, but if I say yes, I have a feeling I'm telling one hell of a lie.
Oh, no, I think the military is
I don't think they do. I don't think the military is willing to do this.
I think a lot of military people are not. I think that we're coming to terms with it with some people. I think it's an organic body. I don't think we still. Well, look at down in Central America. We still, that's a more recent one. We still goon that damn thing. Not that we shouldn't have been there, but the way we go about it.
If the alternative is not to do protracted war and lose, okay, do that. Do it another way and lose. I think we're less willing to lose than do protracted war if we think it through. Although I'm not saying, I'm not buying onto that protracted war. I think there's some quick ways to do it.
I think you can do it rapidly.
I
think you don't have to have it protracted per se, but it's not going to go at this so-called Blitzkrieg pace you want to go at.
Yeah, but if the alternatives are doing it protracted and having a chance of winning, or doing it fast and losing, that may sound ridiculous.
See, Magsaysay did after he got on board, which I'll get into later on. He wrapped it up in 2 years. Magsaysay, remote Magsaysay, when he came on board, they were going down the tubes. In 2 years, he turned the whole thing
We
around.
had that whole example before us, before we went to Vietnam.
All there.
Magsaysay inside and out as a first lieutenant. When I went over there in 1965, and you know, those examples were there, combat history examples, Popicals.
He did it in 2 years. Well, you can't say that's a real long. It takes a little time. But he turned the whole goddamn thing around. Got everything got cleaned out. The guerrillas did it in 2 years, and they were going down the tubes from defeat to victory in 2 years.
We used that model for our campaign, for setting it up. It was one of the models that we
Defeat to
used.
victory.
So, you know, the information was out there.
It was out there, but you know. That's not those nice European planes. You got tanks thundering through, personnel carriers, close air support, and all that stuff. You know, that's not our way.
Where was that? Where was it?
Make say Philippines.
Philippines.
So here's what you're trying to do. You shape, exploit crisis.
1950.
And then use this, like we said before, and so the implication is very clear. You're trying to penetrate the very essence, the abstract moral, mental, physical being. Generate the name, non-corpus. That's the message. Go ahead.
It's obvious, but it applies
That's the main drag.
this is obvious, but it applies to the understanding of the language, culture, and religion.
Precisely. Precisely. How many people read, there's a book out on that where he brings it out very vividly, is Silence Was a Weapon by Harrington. He pointed that out. It's a very nice book if you haven't read it. And I think it's still out in soft cover. I got it, you know, about 4 or 5 years ago. You know, it's a damn good book. And he learned the Vietnamese language, but then he pretended he didn't know it. So he went over there and pretended he didn't know it. He was sucking up all kinds of information. So he took the opposite. He learned the thing, you know, and very few people knew he knew it, and he would go in these places where he thought he's a dumb American, and he'd listen to him, he's sucking up all kinds of information. So he did a double whammy on him. He said it proved it's very valuable. It's a very interesting book. And he didn't always do it. There's some instances, you recall, he was playing that kind of a game. So it's important you understand the culture that we're going to get in just a minute. You're on to something we're just going to talk about in just a minute.
This going to require long-term, not long-term, but intensive investment into the individual.
Well, God damn it, don't you want to make that investment? Don't you want to win? Screw it. Oh, no, we're going to do it over the weekend. We're going to win this goddamn war over the weekend.
I hear you, sir.
That's not the American way. Yeah, we got the weekend to do this. Okay, so here's looking back now, going back over Guerrilla Campaign, Social Revolutionary Strategy, etc. You see what's happening, underlying philosophy here. Fine, here's what it is. We're going right back over it. Same thing, sort of the philosophy they're playing on. So they're right. This. You see it has a very high moral content, high moral mental content. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's not just, you know, arms and legs and bodies going in all directions. Okay? So the insight associated with that, now we're coming up on the very point with the sergeant here. The point is, many perceive an illegitimate equality. That is, when people see themselves exploited and oppressed for the undeserved rich and better needed to. In other words, a lot of people are getting screwed and the other people are taking care of themselves. Let them eat cake. You got the basis for a revolution or insurrection or whatever work. There's a sufficient number of people. That's what I'm talking about. That doesn't mean the world's equal. What I call illegitimate inequality. Not only do you need the illegitimate equality, you also need support of the people. Otherwise, you can't even play the game. It's impossible. So it raises a rather important question. In the deepest possible sense, what does it mean to have support of the people? So let's take that on. Now we're coming up with the question, the point that the sergeant made. You must build up those implicit connections and bonds with people in the countryside. In other words, you must be able to blend into the emotional, cultural, intellectual environment of people until they become one with the people. You become part of the scene, so to speak. Why do you want to do that? Just to stop right here before the Why do you want to do that? What are you doing that for? Good guy? No. What are you really doing that for? That's right. You're trying to establish the bonds and build up those bonds of trust so you can work with them and they're on your side, not on the other side. Exactly right. And if you're off standoffish and you're living in your culture and they're living in theirs, it's never going to happen. You're a stranger, they're going to treat you like a stranger, there's mistrust all the way, period. And that's why it was so important to have those CAP teams and inside the villages, working with the people, building up those bonds so you can play the game instead of running off doing search and destroy. That's why they should have been in the village instead of attacking the village, like I said in the central scene in that movie Platoon. I looked at that and I said, there it is. That's how we lost. As soon as I saw that, I said, now I know why we lost. I thought it was beautiful. There's the message why we lost the war. We're attacking the very people we're trying to defend. So then, in this sense, people feelings and thoughts must be guerrilla feelings and thoughts. Etc., etc., etc. And those people read silence was a weapon. Didn't Harrington bring that out very clear? I thought he was very clear in that issue. You might not have used exactly these words, but he said that. Result. Incidentally, there's a good book out. I don't think it's any longer in print. There's a book called Guerrilla Strategies by Chow Yun. Any of you people can get a copy. Anybody read Chow Yun's book, Guerrilla Strategies? Really, it's a first-rate book.
It's in the library.
Yeah, it's first-rate. So the result, the guerrillas become indistinguishable from the people while the government is isolated from the people. That's exactly what happened to them. So the key to success. Note that first bullet, the key to success. It's said a special way. Building continuously great revolutions with no risk and cause government to alienate itself from the people. We always say the people alienated from the government. That's wrong. The government alienates itself from the people because of own incompetence, inability to come to grips with things they should have come to grips with. They alienate themselves. I mean, that might help if they added the guerrillas, but nevertheless they're alienating themselves in a sense. So you can look at this. Crucial, of course. And they're playing mild, playing dispersion, concentration. Cites it all the time. Okay? So, guerrilla results. And this is a very truncated list. I couldn't count this again. Started the American colonies. Here we fought the redcoats, down here we became the redcoats. So here we fought the redcoats, here we became the redcoats. Okay, here are the fellows. Now that's another operation that should have been studied. We started out badly there, we finally figured out the right thing to do, and we were quite successful. There's some good lessons in there. But you know, that's right, that happened to turn of the century, screw it, it's unimportant. South Africa. In a sense, I should probably put that over this side. Because they caused the British all kinds of problems. Not only that, the only way the British could get them to quit is they gave them very favorable terms. Not only that, later on the South Africans got their independence anyway, so in a sense they were successful. Greece, 44, 45. Philippines, this is one by Magsaysay. He came on board and in 2 years reversed almost a certain defeat into absolute victory. And we had all that information available to us going into Vietnam. See, but he understood how to fight the guerrillas. Remember, he was a guerrilla himself initially. So now he became a guerrilla working for the government, so he turned the tables on.
You know, you really see the same thing in Malaya, too. I mean, it's misleading. You see all those years there, but it was actually won in the last 3 or 4 years. You know, like Briggs took over and they turned the tables.
Briggs finally got there, they started turning it around, yeah. Finally they get their act together. Well, yeah, I showed a lot of years here, too, 46, 54. But only the last couple of years,
same thing.
the same thing. We finally figured out, hey, there's a way of doing this.
So the better example than Malaya is Thailand. Because in Southeast Asia, that's the only country the communists completely failed.
Say again?
In Thailand.
Yeah.
That's the only country the communists failed completely in the last 30 or 40 years. Just because the Thai people believe in the king. Whatever the king said is like God. So
They couldn't
cannot.
pull it off. Couldn't pull it off.
Malaysia, they were quite successful initially.
Initially, but then they were.
Until last few islands, past 40 years.
Yeah, now what's happened, see, not only that, the Philippines would make sense, they turn it all around, but now they let it all goddamn fester all over, so now we got big problems over there again. So it's not clear that they still may take over. You know, they blew it. See, Marcos and his guy, you know, doing the heavy-handed stuff, so now it's all started all over again. And interestingly enough, you should read there's an essay, as a matter of fact, in Guerrilla Strategies about, from the communist side over there, how they lost the Philippines. The whole thing's coming apart. They don't know where to go, boy. They're being scarfed up so fast by the government. They don't know where to go because the government's getting the villages on their side. See, so now they're the ones that are being underrun and don't know where to go. It's an interesting story. That's why they're one of the losers. Okay? Okay, with that in mind then, let's look at it from a tactical viewpoint here. Remember, in Blitzkrieg you're trying to avoid the battle, so guerrillas are trying to avoid the battle. You know, remember we say they only stand up and fight. No, they're not going to stand up and fight. They got a better game to play and they're going to pull us apart. Instead, you want to penetrate the adversary, subvert, disrupt, or siege, those kind of things that allow him to maintain his cohesion. Whether they be psychological, moral bonds, communication, lines of communication, command supply centers, etc. And exploit ambiguity, deception, mobility, violence, and it generates surprise and shock again, again, and again. And wipe out those isolated units you create. And the intent's very simple. If you do this, the intent's a natural consequence, as a matter of fact. It becomes a natural consequence. Okay? Here, I'll skip this one. Here, I'm just giving an Israeli example of disrupting connections to centers to provide cohesion. And you get a good comment on that. So, key question, why have the Blitz and drill tactics been so extraordinarily successful? Let's take that on. That's what. Because these are the kind of things that are going on. More distinct or more irregular equipment, ways we can't seem to see through because of an outbreak. They can concentrate or disperse, infiltrate or penetrate. So by operating in this way, they're going to get inside their adversaries and move rather than the other way around. You know, a lot of this, even at least in the regular war, was uncovered by some of those peoples that fought them. I'm trying to show you in those areas where they have the same ideas, because guerrilla is much more powerful, much more subtle social warfare than Blitzkrieg. How many people have read Clausewitz? Anybody here? Anybody read book one, at least book one, chapter one of Clausewitz? Let me make a point with that. In fact, chapter one of book one is considered the only chapter that was complete. The rest of them had revised. And on the very last page, he says, you know, you divide a government up into three components. A society into three components. The government, the armed forces, and the people. He says you do it. You know, the government, the way he said it, is responsible for the policy of the armed forces, you know, the security of the nation and the people to provide the necessary support. Let's think about it. Just hold it. We're going to appeal that paradigm. Let's put that in our mind. Now let's talk about a coup d'etat. In a coup d'etat, what are you doing? All you're doing is you're working against the regime of the government, not the armed forces or the people. Now let's talk about conventional warfare like Blitzkrieg. You're working against the armed forces and also the government, but the people are sort of the background. Now let's talk about guerrilla warfare. What are you doing? Now you're trying to capture the people on your side. And since that's a support base for both the army or the military and the government, they're just useless overhead now. They have nothing to run with or away. Now, whether Mao thought it that way or not, he was doing the right thing. Because without the people, you have nothing to run. You have no armed forces, you have nothing to defend. And it withers away. Not only that, the armed forces and the government are made up of the people, so the whole thing just dies away. Crumbles. And that's why I say, since it involves the whole social fabric, is a greater totality of war than either Blitzkrieg or other kind. Because you got the whole social fabric of society involved. Okay? Now let's turn the argument around. Incident head should be defend against or counter. The word of my daughter when she typed an F instead of an R. Yeah, it's already correct. In any case, first the Blitz, then the Guerrilla. Remember we showed you this chart earlier on. We showed you all this irregular activity. And then a point that I made earlier on, which I call a key point here, I might not have said it exactly the same way, but basically the same kind of thing. Remember, it's difficult to sustain both fast tempo and main cohesion when forced to getting the rapid shift concentration strength against weakness. So in the sense that Blitzkrieg has a hard time holding itself together, two sheets of work on it. You can play a counter. So I'll let you read this and I'll comment. See what's going on. You see now, since we build up a repertoire, now we can go through and exploit the ideas we built up along the way. That's what I'm doing now. We move more rapidly to exploit it. Let's go to the posture. First of all, you want to depend upon your intelligence, reconnaissance, etc. In other words, you're trying to get as much information from many different sources as you can. Then set yourself up in depth. First region behind there, you want this kind. Behind that, this. You want to set yourself up in depth so you can adjust the circumstances. And note this. Deploy, disperse, and frequently redeploy and redisperse. Why do you want to redeploy and redisperse? Anybody. Because if you keep the units the same thing, they're going to know that you're going to become predictable. So you want to keep changing it so you give the guy a real, he can't figure out what's going on. In other words, you want to build up his uncertainty so he can't cope with what's going on. That's what you're trying to do. At the same time, when you do that, you want to set up such that you can still easily focus your own main efforts to dig into those threats when they're coming into you. Preferably from the flank or rear, not head on. And reserves. Why do you want strong reserves? I can give you 3 reasons, 2 of which Cloud would say. 1, reserves are used for what? To deal with uncertainty, unforeseen events. You don't know exactly what's going to happen, so it gives you a basis for dealing with something unforeseen that turns up. To adjust to unforeseen events, that's what reserves. So that's 1 reason. 2, to sustain or prolong operations. Without reserves, you're going to wear your people out. And that's why you want to reconstitute reserves all the time. And there's a 3rd reason. Clausewitz had 2 of them, but there's a 3rd reason. Can anybody guess what the 3rd one is?
Support that area where you would penetrate the weakness.
Yeah, it's all right, but I want to get more fundamental reason, a higher level reason. It's all right. Anybody want to try? Yeah, you're sort of right, but what I'm trying to say is your adversary doesn't know how you're going to use reserves, so you generate uncertainty in his mind, too. Remember, you're using reserves in order to generate uncertainty that is relative to him, also to prolong operations. Since he doesn't know exactly how you're going to use your reserves, you build up uncertainty in his mind, too. So 3 ways. For you to deal with it, also to build it up in him. Because it allows you, it's very important. When you look at the German operation, you talk about it all the time. And then, of course, your action. Don't get put in the bag. Start using your screening assets, your recce assets to find out what the hell's going on. You get a picture of what's going on. And then you can start moving your troops into those regions so you can start hitting them from the local flanks and the rear. Start digging into them. But if they have a lot of forces going through, they're still going to blow through, and that's why you got the reserves back here. So then you can have a arcing swift counterstroke and really cut them up, roll them up in the flank and rear. In other words, you got multiple thrusts going to them like they're coming into you, so you're building up their problem also. And the idea is very simple. So what are you really doing here? Think about it. What are you really doing?
Conducting your own blitz.
It's a reverse blitz, that's all. That's right. In fact, that's what Ball said. All you do is you don't defend, you counterattack. It's a reverse blitz. So it's a reverse blitz. Look at Manstein's operations in Las Vegas. He's doing his reverse blitzes, sucking them in and doing reverse blitzes on them all the time. When he could. He permitted them. So was Balk on the Eastern Front. Anybody ready? How many people here read Panzer Battles? Read about old Balk and the Chur River and all that area, and how he's doing all that stuff with outnumbered? So it's sort of a reverse blitz. Notice I didn't say counter blitz, not defend. I let the other guy defend. I like that. I don't like the word defend. I like initiative and response. Initiative and response, not defend. Let him defend. You may be going backwards. I'm not defending. I'm taking initiative so I can bag that son of a bitch.
It's like when you box.
You understand what I'm saying?
You see him moving, you hit him in the shoulder, and that stops, it negates his punch.
Well, you got thrust and parry, but that's, but you're setting up a thrust.
I mean, you're not blocking his punch. You're
I understand.
hitting him in the shoulder to stop him. Hit him right where.
Okay? Okay.
Working, George.
Now look at this. What's a counter blitz? Main features. Heavy intelligence and recce. Infiltration, penetration, or penetration, isolation. You penetrate, you isolate, and then you subdue.